Hi, everyone. Welcome to Firefish and Ferret Flamingo Practicum, Practicum, orientation, student orientation, whatever the proper word is for it. Thanks for joining tonight, everybody. Feel free to holler out with any questions that you have along the way. So first thing we're going to cover, this is going to look a little bit familiar from the next steps meeting we had, like a gazillion years ago when you were still in class. But in general, the structure is we've got React and Node students together on teams with a mentor. Each group will also have an assistant mentor that is a current apprentice with Code the Dream Labs. So they've been through what you're going through, and they will be able to help share insights and tips and all that good stuff. So primarily you should be helping each other and working together as a team. And when you hit blockers that you can't resolve together as a team or on your own, that's when you should be reaching out to your mentors and backup mentors. The Ruby on Rails students that are on the call, you have a mentor, and John McGarvey, your cohort leader, is your backup mentor. So if you need to reach out to Daniel Sin, your mentor, or John McGarvey, your backup mentor for anything, feel free to. But you all are just everybody together in one group. So it's a nice, cozy little family. All right, so curriculum. What are you going to be covering? It's going to look a little different whether you're in the Firefish Practicum or the Ferret Flamingo Practicum. But regardless of which practicum you are in, and regardless of what end or specialty or features you are building in practicum, your goal should be to build on the learning that you had through class. So strengthen the skills that you built in class and then stretch out those skills a little bit. Get out of your comfort zone, maybe tackle something that's new that you were wondering about in class, implement something that you didn't look at in class. For Ruby on Rails, that might look like new gems. For React and Node, it might look like including different packages or building different structures than what you used for your to-do list app, or just advancing sort of that data structure that you built in the Node class and doing a little bit more with it. The biggest three things in practicum are cooperate, collaborate, communicate. Those are the biggest three C's. So work together with one another. When you run into problems, help each other out, pair program. So both of you together, pair up with a buddy, both of you together, look at the code, try and figure out what's going on. If you haven't heard the rubber duck term up to this point, you will be hearing it now. You can always rubber duck to solve your code issues. Rubber ducking means you take some inanimate object and you explain what your code is doing line by line to said inanimate object. Thank you, Roy. See, he's got his little Code the Dream duck showing off there. It doesn't have to be a duck. It can be whatever. It could be a stuffed animal. It could be your phone. It could be your shoe. It doesn't matter. But explain it line by line to work through, because that's usually when you're going to spot and be like, oh, bam, I just found what the issue was. So rubber ducking is very helpful. We encourage it. And communicate. Don't be an island unto yourself. I know that's what you've been doing all through class because you've just been working on your own code and your own code base. If something goes wrong, you work with a mentor, you figure it out, whatever. But now you are going to have teammates relying on the code you're building, and you will be relying on your teammates' code that they're building. So you need to communicate as far as what are you building? Where are you at with it? When will you be done with it? Have you run into any issues? Is something somebody else built causing problems for what you now have to build? So communicate. You'll be learning about workflow process. So if terms like Agile, Scrum, and Stand-Up are new to you, you'll be learning about those in practicum. Agile is just the methodology of taking a product and iterating over it multiple times to be able to improve it a little bit each time. So there's been some videos that show examples of, like, if you want to build the world's best burger, you start with just a burger and then you test it, you give it to people to try out, and they say, this needs a little ketchup, this needs a little lettuce on it, whatever. And so your next iteration, you try it with just the ketchup. The next iteration after that, you try it with the lettuce. So that's what Agile is just each time you work through finding ways to make small improvements on what's going on with your block of code or with your app. Scrum is usually a daily thing, and it's for everybody to be able to just say, here's what I've done, here's what I'm working on, here's any blockers that I've hit. So it's just a quick check-in to be able to let everybody know so you're all on the same page and are communicating. Are you sensing a theme yet? On what all is going on with your work and with the work as a team. And then, oh, sorry, I think I mixed those up. Did I mix those up, Frank? Stand-ups are daily, Scrum is weekly. I probably mix those up.
Well, stand-ups are daily. Scrum is like the overlying like agile principle of like what you do. Yeah.
Okay, yes, so I mix those
Mhm.
up. See, I'm not doing
It's
these
okay.
on a regular basis since I'm a coordinator and not a developer. But anyway, so your stand-ups are those daily check-ins, and then your scrum is your weekly meeting where you're getting together and just checking in with everybody, seeing if you need to pivot what your plans are, and going from there. Okay, so get comfortable using project management tools. A lot of developers have some kind of ticketing system and or some kind of organization system, so that way they know who's working on what features and where they're at with the item that they're working on. You have GitHub projects available. You can do Trello, you can do Jira. There are just so many different options out there for you. Do whatever your team agrees on and whatever you're most comfortable with. We will be able to set up GitHub projects for you if you're wanting to do that and hit the ground running with that. But feel free to do whatever works for your team. You're not limited to being just GitHub projects or anything along those lines. So you'll be learning how those projects are managed from concept. So a lot of you have probably already started brainstorming within your teams what you want to do. If you haven't, that's okay. Don't worry about it. The first week is nailing down all of those housekeeping things. What's the project we're going to build? What are the minimum feature items that we need to be included in order for this to be a viable product? And when are we doing meeting times? What's the expectation for turnaround time on tickets and various things like that? So you'll talk about all of that. Everything's outlined in week 1. But you'll learn how everything goes from concept all the way through deployment. You'll have to work with merge conflicts. That might be familiar territory for some of you if you ran into any hiccups when you were doing your classwork. It might be completely new to some of you if everything went smooth with your classwork. But it's important to understand what merge conflicts are and how to resolve them. And basically, it's when two people are submitting code that conflict with each other. So lines of code that don't agree. And so in order to do the merge, then GitHub needs to know which one am I taking, which is the right body of code. So you'll work through the process of being able to resolve those merge conflicts. You'll learn about code review, taking a look at a classmate's or a teammate's rather, a teammate's code and giving feedback as far as, yeah, this looks good. This is an area that we could probably simplify and have others do the same for you. And then at the very end, you're going to demo your work, which is important to be able to get comfortable with, or at least get exposure to, talking about what you built, explaining it to other people in a concise manner, because you might have to give a presentation to a client someday, or you might have to explain it to a project manager as far as what your team's built and where you're at with things. So it's always good to be able to get comfortable or get experience talking about your work. And then as a byproduct, hopefully at the end, you'll have a completed and deployed simple app. But the main things, as you will see, are primarily focused on, we want you to be able to get comfortable working in a team. We want you to get comfortable communicating, get comfortable with the tools that are going to be used. So, questions up to this point about curriculum? Cool, cool. All right. So it should be similar time commitment to class, 10 to 20 hours a week, roughly. Um, if the ways that it's going to be different from class, you'll have less structure. So it's not follow these, instructions for building your lines of code or meet these rubric requirements for your final project, because you all are deciding what your projects are. And so it's hard to shoehorn an e-commerce site and a chat site into the same product description. So it'll be a little bit less structure. And there might be things that aren't specifically outlined in your curriculum that you might want to use, like third-party libraries, gems, bootstrap type structure for your styling, anything along those nature. You're welcome to use any of those things in your projects. The world is your oyster. You will still have objectives for your team as well as for your stack team. So front or back end for React and Node, as well as things that you should be accomplishing on your own. So when you're in those weekly Scrum meetings with your whole team, that's when you'll be deciding, okay, who's working on this feature, who's working on this page, who's working on this functionality. So you'll be working on those tasks your own, but you have to come back together as a team and make sure that you're hitting your marks and cooperating with one another. You should have a little bit more of a regular schedule that'll kind of mimic a real world work situation, part-time work situation. So you'll have those bi-weekly sprints. Each The curriculum is broken up into 2-week blocks, sprint 1 through sprint 4. You'll have weekly meetings with your end. So React students should get together, Node students should get together. And then you should also have a meeting for your group as a whole. And you should be communicating regularly with your team. It doesn't always have to be synchronous. You can just have a post that posts every Wednesday and everybody can say, okay, here's where I'm at with things, or, 10 o'clock every morning or whatever, and say, here's what I'm done, here's what I'm working on. And then you'll be collaborating more with each other. You didn't really do that because you were building your own projects, but now you're building one together. So, all right, tools that you're going to be using, classes.codethedream.org. So let me jump over and give you a view on that. Hopefully everybody's been able to log in okay. If not, please let me know right away if you cannot get in and see your courses. Your main dashboard is going to look like so, with links out to your welcome and your sprints and things like that. You can click on courses, you'll see your course history. You can click on your practicum group. Ferret Flamingos, this is what your page will look like. Ruby on Rails folks, that's what your page will look like. So from now until Monday or on Monday, whatever your schedule allows for, your only task is to read through your Welcome to Practicum page. So that way you have a good idea of what all is going on and have dialogue with your team in your team's channels to determine what day and time you want to have your weekly meetings as a group. From there, then you can just work through the weeks. They let you know this is what backend should be doing this week. This is what front end should be doing this week. Gives you information as far as on your first full stack meeting, here are things that you should be talking about. If anybody does not have a project idea yet for their team, there's a link here on this page, 60 ideas for projects for your group. So feel free to check that out to start picking out 2 or 3 of your favorites so you can talk about it in your first meeting. And then of course we've got additional resources if you need any refreshers on GitHub workflows or writing code or working with code written by somebody else, and Git commands and pull requests and just all kinds of agile principles, Scrum principles, what a Kanban board is, or what, a ticketing system is. All of that kind of stuff is all in there. So feel free to check that out next week for week 1 for the React Node folks. For Ruby on Rails folks, then we also have the list of activities for things that you should be covering with your team at your first meeting, and then additional resources that you can take a look at. Okay, I think that covers that as far as classes.codethedream.org tools for being able to get in and take a look at your curriculum. GitHub is where your repositories will be, obviously. We are going to have a Code the Dream School front and back end repositories. So React Node, you guys will each have 2 repositories that your team is working with. For Ruby on Rails, you have the option, if you agree and decide to work on one person's final project and expand on that as your practicum project, then you'll use that person's repository as your code base. If you want to start something completely new, that's totally fine as well. And just let me know, or let Frank know, and we can build a repository so that way it can be housed on Code the Dream School as well. But people will have to be added as collaborators. Check your emails this coming weekend as we build out those repositories. Then you'll get an email from GitHub or through GitHub or whatever that says you've been invited to be a collaborator on XYZ repository or repositories. So just accept that and make sure you're able to see the repositories for your team's projects. You'll have Slack channels that you are already in for collaboration. We have the main primary Practicum All channel. If there are any announcements that apply to all of your groups, we'll be sharing it there. Otherwise, anything particular to your project, keep within your team conversation. I'll be adding a couple of bookmarks here and there. Like once we have your repository set up, I'll put links, bookmarks at the top of your personal team channel, so that way you can easily jump to your GitHub repositories. There are cool tools that we can add in. So if you want GitHub to post a Slack message every time a pull request is merged or an issue is reported or things like that, then we can implement that. So just let us know. Yeah. You already have on the Practicum All channel, and I'll be adding these to each of your individual team channels as well, a bookmark to a calendar. So that way you all can just use a Zoom channel for your meetings. So you're not having to get kicked out after 40 minutes, which usually happens when people use personal Zoom channels. If multiple teams are meeting at the same time, then we'll share the mentor host key with your mentor. So that way you can do breakout rooms and multiple teams can be meeting at the same time in that Zoom channel, but you'll be in your separate breakout rooms for it. The calendar looks like this, and it is also bookmarked in that Practicum All channel at the top. So the Zoom link to be able to join, it's the same channel and meeting link that we're on right now. For the calendar, you would just pick the day and time that your team wants to meet, and you can say, React Node Team 3, and we're going to meet at 4 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. So feel free to just put in information there. And that way other teams know when other teams are going to meet. And that way administration knows if we need to be helpful from a administrative standpoint if there are any Zoom issues during your meeting. Okay, questions about calendar curriculum up to this point?
Where did you say that calendar was bookmarked?
Yeah, for right now, it's on the FFF Practicum All Slack channel at the top. There's a little green green and white plus symbol icon at the very top, the bookmarks.
Gotcha.
Yep, so you can click on there to be able to edit and plug in any information. You all should have edit access. Good, I see a bunch of you popping in right now. Wonderful.
Yep.
So yeah, just make sure that you have edit access so that somebody can add in your team meeting whenever you need to.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Okay. So let's jump back to here. Optional tools that you can use Jira, Trello, Figma, Google Drive, Dropbox, anything that you want that is free to use, that is out there that your team would like to use for organization purposes. It is totally up to you. Amir had asked about if the Flamingo Zoom link is still available. I don't think it is, because I think the Grackle class has taken over that Zoom license for their mentor sessions. So there is just the one. That's why if you will have teams that are meeting simultaneously, your mentors will have the host key so you can do breakout rooms. Hopefully that's helpful. If it winds up becoming a big issue, let me know and I'll see about using a different Zoom license to have as a backup link for you all. Other questions so far? Mentors should be in attendance for your team meetings. So that way they can help you kind of scope the project, make sure that you're not building a bigger project that then can be completed in 8 weeks. So you will definitely see them at your team meetings. And if you really hit a problem that you all can't resolve on your own and can't work through, then that's the best time to reach out to the mentor. Mentors will likely be sharing office hours with you as far as these are the dates and times when I'm best available, kind of a thing. So just be aware they might not be available 24/7. So if you hit a problem on a weekend or in the middle of the night on a Tuesday night, if you're working late or something, like it might be something that you just have to say, okay, I'll just put it to bed and I'll address it tomorrow. Or, get help from a classmate to try and work through something until you can get access to your mentor or to your assistant mentor. Was somebody going to ask a question too? I thought I heard a mic chiming in. Okay. All right. So moving right along. Students, you all are expected to complete assigned tasks. Who assigns the tasks? Your team will assign tasks. So you all divvy out amongst yourselves who's going to be working on what. So complete your assigned tasks weekly, refer to resources as appropriate for your project and tasks. So if you're going to be building authentication and you feel a little unsteady on authentication, look through developmental documentation on it. Watch YouTube videos that help instruct walking through it. Reach out to any other resources, reach out to teammates, anything like that to be able to get comfortable and work through your tasks. Communicate regularly. If you're going to be out for travel, if something's come up in your life that is making your availability to work very unstable, if you're sick, just let your teammates know. So that way, if they need to shuffle things around or reprioritize what they're working on because they know it'll take a little longer for you to get done what you're working on, then just communicate that with them. Attend your group weekly meetings. Be supportive, encouraging, helpful with one another. Keep all of those wonderful CTD values of inclusion, growth, community, and impact, and foster that within your groups. and serve like have Practicum kind of serve as a dress rehearsal for your first developer job. So approach it with the same professionalism as if you were hired onto a development team. So let somebody know if you're going to be out sick, or talk to somebody if you're having struggles with something and maybe you need to swap features with somebody to something that's more in your technical skill level or whatever. It's really, really important to communicate. Okay. Mentors and backup mentors. So the mentors should be attending your group weekly meetings. They should be the voice of experience. So if you all are uncertain if what you're tackling is manageable in that 8-week time period, if you're not sure if it's a helpful feature to add to your product or not, things like that, then you can always talk to them about that. And they should be assisting group and individuals within the group if you all are having any issues or need to solve blockers that you weren't able to work out on your own. And then just be supportive of your learning, be your cheerleaders and your champions, like all of our mentors are always really good at doing. Class flow is going to look a little different from group to group. You all decide what works best for you. If the majority of you have better availability to collaborate on weekends, then your schedule will look different from what this is. This is just an example. But if you're treating it like it's a job, and if you're treating it like Monday through Fridays when most of your work is going to be getting done, regularly check your project management device, so GitHub projects or Trello or Kanban or whatever, and update that as needed as far as what have you completed, move that over to the done pile. What are you still working on? All of that kind of thing. Have a daily Scrum meeting. This can be asynchronous, so just a reminder in your Slack team channel. You could be like, how's everybody doing today? Or what's everybody working on, blocked on, yada, yada. On your meeting day, everybody comes together for the meeting. Provide an update on your last week's work together on any problems that need resolving, make any necessary alterations. So if there's a feature you need to cut because it's just taking too long or you're hitting too many issues with it, that's fine. And then review what your plan is for the upcoming week. If you are doing weekends, continue working on tasks if needed. Throughout the 8 weeks, just keep in mind what your learning goals are and work on building your team skills. Frank, was there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, Mary Alice, I wanted to add
I'm
something.
sorry, I'm just rambling. You should interrupt me. I told people to interrupt
But
me.
you're rambling so good. I mean, I don't want to stop the flow. You know what I mean? So there's one or two questions in the chat. I'm sure other people are kind of just curious, but I know some groups have already started meeting. I think at least one or two, maybe more. So as far as like the meeting schedule, that'll be determined by everybody in the group and the mentors to see the availability, whether Mary Alice said whether it's weekends, whether it's evenings. Obviously, some people are working, some people are not, some people have different schedules. So you'll work that out. In the past, we've realized that that's one of the longest things to kind of get situated with the Practicum group is just figuring out the schedule. So try to get through that early and just post your availability during the week and weekend. The mentor will do as well. So as far as like how many times you're going to meet a week, we mentioned that, but it's going to be really kind of an organic thing depending on the availability of your team and your mentors. Normally you'll have one group meeting and then you'll have probably an individual meeting for your front end and back team. That's usually how most teams work. So maybe like in the middle or the early of the week, you have a group meeting and then you'll have like a back end team meeting and a front end team meeting. And that may or may not be run by the mentor. It just be run by the team itself for the front or back end team. Usually there's like going to be 2 to 3 people, maybe 4, and kind of you'll choose like a student leader if you don't have one, and they'll kind of like run the meeting, but obviously working with everybody else. So depends on, again, mentor availability on how many meetings you'll have, and also whether that mentor or mentors will be available for all your meetings. But you'll work that out in the first week. Okay, that's all I had.
Okay. Interrupt me again if there's stuff that I'm not covering, Frank, okay?
Sure.
Oh, okay. So as I had mentioned, Ferret, Flamingo, you all will have 2 repositories created in the Code the Dream School GitHub account, one for front end, one for back end. You'll be getting those links hopefully this weekend. For Firefish, if you decide to use a classmates project, then you'll work off of their repository. If you decide to start a new one, just let us know so we can create the repository or repositories that you need with Code the Dream School GitHub account. Mentors will have administrative access on these repositories. You all will have write access. So you should be able to do your pushes and pull requests and all of those good things that you need to do. So don't feel nervous about breaking anything. I always feel nervous about breaking anything whenever I'm starting on some new project. The biggest difference is going to be that you're going to clone the repository instead of fork it. So in class, we had sort of your blank workbook of repository that you made your own copy by forking, and then you cloned your forked copy and worked on that. So that way your homework answers wouldn't get sent back to the school for the world to see. This time, though, you want to clone the repository instead of forking it because you want your code to go back to the repository because that's where everything's getting built at. So that's the biggest thing to be aware of. For that reason, you have to be especially careful that you're always doing your work on separate branches. You don't want to be on main when you're changing code because your main is going to be your sort of finalized code for deployment. So you definitely want to be careful that main stays as your finished working copy every time, and that you're only merging things to main when you've checked it and made sure that everything's working and tested it before putting it up on main. So clone, don't fork, and work on separate branches. Another big thing that will help minimize the merge conflicts that you have as you're getting used to working with multiple people on the same code base is communicate about who's working on what. So be clear as far as who's touching what features, who's touching what files for whatever they're working on. And do small frequent commits. So in class, you might have built an entire component and then pushed that. Instead, just build, the base code for your component and don't build out all of the content of it yet. Just make sure that that component is there and shows up as one commit. Then build a little bit of code, make sure that that's functional, commit that. So smaller, more frequent commits will be so much easier to untangle anything if you do hit a merge conflict than if you wind up having this huge, 100, 200 lines of code that you built for this beautiful thing that worked perfectly fine locally, and then you push it and it says merge conflict, and then you have to go through 200 lines of code to figure out, okay, keep this, change this, keep this, change this to be able to resolve it. Anything else you want to share on that topic, Frank?
So just like Mary Alice said, I mean, obviously communication is key. You want to, minimize the work you do per commit. Also, you want to make sure before you do a push to your local branch, to the repos branch, you always want to pull the latest version of the main or dev, however you have that set up. But these things obviously are going to be going through with your mentors. They'll have like a demo in the first or second meeting. So don't think like, okay, I need to know this now. They'll go through this process with you and show you how to do this with, how the merge conflicts will happen or may happen, how to create a branch, even though most people don't know how to create a branch, and just the process itself. So the mentors will go through that with you. But always know that you are going to make a mistake. It's okay. That's the whole process. That's the whole point of these practicums. You want to make a mistake. You want to make as many mistakes as you can, which sounds kind of silly, but you really want to. Reason being, if you make mistakes now, you'll still make mistakes later, but you'll make less mistakes, or you make less of the same mistakes when you get into that first position, whether it's an apprenticeship, a job. So make as many mistakes as you can now, so you'll know how to fix those, and hopefully not repeat them as much, when you go on to like that, that next position you get in the future.
Yeah. And while it feels high stakes because this is the first group project and some of you are looking towards apprenticeship and you probably feel the pressure, but you don't need to be feeling the pressure as much because this is practicum. Practice comes from practicum, like that. They coincide. We expect you to be practicing your skills. We don't expect you to be perfect on your skills. And so it's a really good opportunity to just get comfortable with that in a low stakes situation where you don't have a client that you have to report to, or that's going to be upset that it took twice as long to get something built than you anticipated because you're new and learning about it. So use this as your practice arena and be okay with those mistakes. Love them and nourish them. Okay. All right, moving right along. So the flow, I like to just give a visual on the flow for folks that are React Node. You'll have that front repository, you'll have a back repository. So students will pull from main, do a working branch for whatever it is that you're working on, push the working branch back, and then you'll be reviewing those pushes before you update main with the changes that were made by each of the individual students on their working branches. Same thing with back. Pull from main, do a branch off for your features, and then push it back so that way it can be reviewed before you update main. Similar concept as far as Ruby Rails, only you might have a front repository. You'll probably just have the one primary repository that you're working on, but regardless of whether you use 2 or 1 repositories, structure is the same concept. Pull from main before you start anything that you're doing to make sure that your code is already up to date with whatever the most recent version of main is. Branch off, get your work done, do your push. So hopefully the visual kind of helps a little bit. Sometimes you just gotta see it going. We talked a little bit about.
Sorry. One other thing too. So we talked about just before with merge conflicts, also saying, oh well, it works good on my machine, but then I have some issues. So another really good opportunity of things not working is, it works good locally. You may even have a merge conflict, but then you fix it, and then someone else, tests your code and it doesn't work. So another reason something may not work is you're working on the front end, but somebody in the back end made some changes that you didn't realize. So that's where that front and back end team also needs to communicate. So you're going to have your group meeting, your individual front and back end meeting, but there also has to be communication from the front end team to the back end team. So again, another opportunity for things to break, but again, just helps you with your communication skills overall.
Awesome, thanks, Frank. So we talked about Agile, Sprint, and Scrum earlier a little bit. So Agile is just that iterative approach to project management. So working in small, manageable increments of work to improve with each iteration, kind of like a for loop of work worth. In Sprint, it's going to be a 2-week period. Sprints can look different when you're actually in development. Then sprints can look different depending on what your team does and what you're looking at and what you're building. But in Practicum, it's going to be a 2-week period where you're just focused on a specific feature of the product. So I think Sprint 1 is really just getting your base repositories set up. I don't think you even need them talking to each other yet, right? Frank, the start of Sprint 2 is when they confirm that front can pull from back and back can talk to front, right?
Well, yeah, the test repo, they'll have them talk just like with some test sample code. And then depending on how far the backend team gets with building their API, then they can do a test. So usually it's by the, second sprint, but kind of depends. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then Scrum are those short daily meetings. These can be asynchronous and, short keyword just to identify what's your progress on your tasks. Are you having any blockers to be able to keep the momentum? You do not want to wait long on resolving issues that come up. So in class, you had a week to be working on an assignment. You had 18 weeks for the class, or 17 weeks for the class. So if you got behind 1 week, you could catch up the next, or there were review weeks built into your class. This is an 8-week time period, so don't slow down by saying, oh, I'm stuck on this. Well, let me try again tomorrow. Oh, well, let me try again the next day. If you hit a problem, go ahead and attempt to tackle that problem. Give yourself a couple of hours to work on it. If it's not working out, step back, take a breather, sit back down. If it doesn't come to you, reach out for help. So don't put off getting assistance on working through a blocker, because it might be something as simple as just, oh, I didn't see that typo. I didn't see that I had, forgotten to import that component or whatever the case may be. And just getting another pair of eyes on it can help you solve it quicker. I ran into that myself several times when I was apprenticing. I'd be like, what's not working and what's not working? And I'd tarry on it for a while. And then it'd be like, oh, well, aren't you missing this? I'm like, oh, duh, of course. Sometimes you just need an extra pair of eyes. So that defines those terms. You'll see them used in your curriculum. That's what those things mean. There's a question about if the mentor has to approve the PR. I think the mentor, since they're the admin on the repository, I think they do ultimately have to merge it. Is that right, Frank?
What was that question again? I was typing.
Do the mentors have to approve the PR and merge it to main?
Oh yeah,
or
I
something?
was just yeah. Yeah, so the mentors will do the merging. The approval process can involve the mentor and other students as well.
Okay, perfect.
No,
Such
I
as
do have a follow-up question with that too. Is that just by convention or is it specifically the roles provided by GitHub?
I think it's the
It's
roles,
just by
right?
it's just like yeah, it's where whoever the mentors will have right access to do the merging. But then the other assistant mentors and our students can do like review as well.
Okay, great.
Mm.
Okay, so the merge conflict, to describe that in case anybody hasn't run into that. When multiple people are working on the same code base, merge conflicts can happen. Two branches that are set to be merged onto one primary branch have differences in code. So computers can only get us so far. When they see two things that have discrepancies, then we need to clarify which discrepancy or which version should be the master version, should be the one that gets merged in. So to avoid conflicts, then pull locally after each pull request gets merged, so that way you have the most recent version of code on your machine. Always do your work on a separate branch from your main or development branches, and those smaller, more frequent changes are better than having large changes infrequently that you have to tease through tons and tons of code to be able to figure out. Hopefully that's helpful for preliminary. Of course, you'll be going into this more in depth throughout Practicum, but I like to at least give you an idea of what goes on. Okay, so what's going to happen now? You're going to decide among your group what day and time you'll meet each week as a whole group. If there's any kind of issues to where somebody absolutely cannot meet, the only time that everybody else in the team can meet, talk to me, so that way if we need to shuffle anybody around on teams, swap mentors, anything like that, then we can take care of that. React and Node students, you'll want to decide when you will be meeting as your little subgroups of front end and back end. If you haven't yet, brainstorm ideas for your project or narrow it down to just one or two ideas, so that way your mentors can help make sure that your project isn't too big of a project for the 8-week time period. And then start looking at your Welcome to Practicum page and your Sprint 1 pages in that CTD Learns app. Let me know if you can't get into those. That should be actually that should be number 1 at the top of this list, is if you can't get into those, talk to me right away. Okay, after Practicum, so at the end of the 8 weeks of all of this, hard work, dedication, blood, sweat, and tears, whatever you want to call it, then you'll complete a self-evaluation form. That self-evaluation form serves as part of your apprenticeship application. So if you are interested in applying for the apprenticeship, complete your self-evaluation first, right away at the very end of Practicum. Frank and I will be sending you links to the self-evaluation forms and the team evaluation forms. So that way and have them available so you can fill that out. You'll complete team evaluation forms so that way you can give feedback to classmates as far as these are things that they did great. These are things that they should strengthen before they're applying to places, or keep in mind so that they know those are skills to grow as they're looking for work. So team evaluations are equally important. Please get them done on each of your teammates at the end of Practicum. In addition to the self-evaluation, which serves as your application for the apprenticeship, if you are pursuing the apprenticeship, then you will complete a coding assessment. So we will share that with you towards the end of the Practicum. The apprenticeship information, it's a 1-year offer with a 9-month minimum commitment. So no job searching during the first 9 months. It's 40 hours a week. It is remote. The hours are flexible, but you will have dedicated hours during the week when you have to meet with your project team. It's a paid position with benefits. It's only available to people with US work authorization, and it can be renewed for a 2nd year. So at the end of the year, if you want to do it again, just let us know. Questions about the end of Practicum that I can answer?
Also, did you mention that there's a presentation at the end? Probably did.
I don't know if I did. I briefly did about a demo.
Oh my
God.
God.
So thank you, Frank. All right, Tuesday, April 30th at noon Eastern. We have what's called Weekly Cafe, where all of our apprentices and staff members join. Usually it's just a fun time for all of us to get together. But on April 30th, it will be an extra fun time because we get to see all of your hard work. Don't stress about presenting. It's good practice, just like with your final project presentations. Like, these are people who love and support you and are excited to see all of the accomplishments you were able to do and to see how you toiled and worked through it. So it's just an opportunity to be able to demo your work as a team. There are pages in your curriculum that go over information that you should cover in that demo. We have links to sample slides, so that way you can organize your thoughts for your presentation. And it's just 5 to 10 minutes long. Everybody in your team participates in some way, shape, or form to talk about what you worked on the project, and overall what your project's challenges were, what you might include in a second version, things that you're proudest of, all of those good things.
But yeah, so usually like the last week of practicum, that week 7 to 8, most teams are working on the presentation, or at least partially. I'll be posting information about the presentation like that last week or two, as far as like what to look for, how long it should be, template for your presentation slides and things like that. So it's not something you have to worry about now, but just know that at some point you'll have to do a little preparation for it. If you can't make the time for presentation, you can do recording part of your presentation. We have a lot of students in previous groups that, a lot of them could make it, so just did recordings, a little 1 or 2 minute recording of your part of it. And we just played that part as a presentation for that group.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a question about the assessment, that coding test for anybody that's going forward with the apprenticeship. It's an online test. We give you about a 2 to 3 week period that you would complete it within that time frame. As it stands right now, I don't know if there'll be any revisions to it, but for the React folks, as it stands right now, you have a 4-hour window. It won't necessarily take you a full 4 hours, but we give you a 4-hour window to complete it. So you will need to find somewhere in that 2 to 3 week period a 4-hour window where you will have uninterrupted time that you can sit down and work through it. We'll be sharing sample test practice exercises prior to that. But in general, it's something similar to what you would see if you're applying for a technical job and they give you sort of a technical assessment. Frank, is there any other details you want to include about that?
Yeah, I forgot with the last one, or well, the one we did, it was a combination of JavaScript and React questions. What did we do for the Node folks? Did we do things? I forgot what we did.
There isn't one for Node because and there might be one that comes along for Node folks. We don't have a ton of Node projects on the lab side right now, so most of the
we'll
need to fill a React.
We'll have to reevaluate that. I have to ask Tom, because the ones who just took Node, not React, they wouldn't be able to take the React part of the assessment.
Correct.
So I'll review that with Tom before that gets given out. But normally it's a combination of JavaScript coding assessments. I would say it's like similar-esque to what you would see like kind of on a LeetCode, like LeetCode Easy. But we'll give some sample. We just started last practicum, so we're kind of getting through some of the issues and stuff, and we'll be kind of tweaking as we go. But we'll give you some test ones, as Mariella said, before you actually have to take it, to give you a little practice as well. And then we'll kind of figure out the whole like React if you're a Node person as well issue.
Yeah, the format is coding exercises, so you will be writing writing code snippets, working through lines of code for that exercise. For Ruby on Rails folks, you all have a 2-hour window. It's all multiple choice. It's just Ruby and Rails concepts. Yeah, I think that covers it for Ruby and Rails. It's a smaller window because it's just multiple choice. I think it's 50 questions, 50 or 60 questions, somewhere in there. And same kind of window as far as like a 2 to 3 week window for you to be able to take it. You can only take it once. You can't take it multiple times. So be sure that you're studying and feel ready before you take it. Daria, yeah, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, about those questions. Is it more of algorithms or theory on React, for example, or theory on JavaScript?
It's not theory at all. It's basically, so it's an online IDE. We use CoderByte. There's other ones out there that are similar. And basically it's an online IDE where basically we say, so it'll be like create a function that finds all the vowels in a string, or create a function that searches through a string and does this, like those type of ones where it's not like it's not going to be anything advanced, but it's something that you have to really think about. And if you never did those types before, it could take some time. So again, we'll do a little practice stuff before the practicum's over. And as far as the React ones, it's actually like build a React component that renders this, or build a simple to-do app, or build like it's building really simple to-do applications with like 1 or 2 components, but you
And no
have
styling.
a limited time frame. What was that?
Mhm.
And no styling. You don't have to worry about CSS.
No, yeah, no
You're
styling.
building
Yeah,
these simple
but
things.
it's not
just
theory or anything
functional.
else. It's actually coding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, you will be told, be provided study guides as far as things to be able to help prepare you for the assessment. Yeah. All right. I think that covers everything that we had for students. So, other questions that we have not yet answered from students that you all need to be able to feel comfortable, confident, and ready to roll on Monday.
Yeah, where can we find the recording? Oh, I guess you'll post it later once we're
Yeah, I'll
done.
post it in that
Yep.
Practicum All channel later tonight. Yeah, it'll take me a little bit because I got to download and then upload and, bandwidth and all that stuff, but I'll get it out there to you.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. All right. I think we've answered everything then. If you think of other questions, we're around. Feel free to post questions in that Practicum All channel. If there are any sort of general questions that you have that aren't particular or specific to your team's work. So give us a shout if you need any help. And we're here for you. And we're excited to get y'all started on Monday. Thanks, students. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mary.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
mentors.
Thanks so much.